Until today, I have basically only reported on things that took place in the United States. But in other countries, we also have a few unique stories and streets that are known worldwide. Take Germany for example. The most famous German street is, of course, the Reeperbahn in Hamburg. The district attracts millions of tourists every year, but the red light also attracts many criminal organizations. That is until the police set up a task force to investigate organized crime in the early 1980s. Since then, every group that tries to take over the neighborhood is immediately crushed by the police. And not without reason, because since the 1970s, there has been a constant war for dominance on the streets of the Reeperbahn. Since I also report on organized crime, today we are looking at the battle for power in Hamburg's red light district. In the 60s, prostitution on the Reeperbahn was booming, and many women stood on the street to offer their services. Since this did not fit well with the cityscape, the Hamburg Senate decided to open the largest brothel in Germany, with over 250 rooms where the women could work in peace, the Eros Center. A year later, the Palais d'Amour followed. With the opening of the Palais d'Amour in the mid-70s, the first pimp organization called GmbH was established. Actually a term for a registered company in Germany. The name was given by 4 successful pimps based on their first names. G for Gerald Gliessman, M for Michael Luchtig, B for Walter Vogler, who was called Beetle, and H for Harry Fortmann. They start with 2 to 3 women, but the number grows daily until they become the leading group on the quays. They have quite a few women in the Eros Center and in the Palais d'Amour, through whom they earn thousands a day. They then show off the money they have earned with luxury cars and jewelry. The birth of the pimps as we know them today. Nobody wanted to mess with the GmbH until a small group of guys made a name for themselves in the pimp scene. At first, the GmbH laughed at the younger guys. "Let's see them eat chocolate bread," said one member of the GmbH. In a gesture of defiance, the young pimp group of 7 then called themselves the Nutella Gang, after a well-known chocolate spread. In addition to the 2 groups, which are getting bigger and bigger, small street gangs are also forming, such as the Street Boys, the radical Chicago Gang, and biker gangs like the Hells Angels, who came to Hamburg in 1971. But even though there are now several groups on the quays, there is so much money to be made that they sometimes even work side by side without stress. But unfortunately, that changed in the early 80s. The income in the red light district is decreasing because most of the punters are afraid of the new AIDS virus. The financial collapse means that the pimps can no longer maintain their standard of living. They look for a new source of income, and so coke came to the neighborhood for the first time. Many of the pimps use the drug in addition to selling it, and the drug use, coupled with the financial downturn, causes a lot of arguments and the first death. The second largest brothel, Palais d'Amour, which has about 240 rooms and where many women from the whole gang work, is run by Vienna Peter and Chinese Fritz. They also have women working there themselves. But due to the small amount of income, Chinese Fritz wants to part with Vienna Peter in 1981. The dispute between the two is said to have escalated, so that Vienna Peter is said to have hired a hitman from Sicily. On September 28, 1981, Chinese Fritz was shot in the bar Ritze, and from that day on, Vienna Peter no longer had to share his income. But even though there were rumors that Vienna Peter had given the order, nothing could be proven against him, and to this day, he has not been prosecuted. The first murder marked the beginning of a new era on the Reeperbahn. The first pimps start to arm themselves, and a power struggle develops that escalates over the smallest of things. The competition is so fierce that from 1982 onwards, almost every month, someone from the red light district loses their life. In April 1982, Dieter Mohr of the GmbH was shot by a man dressed as a police officer. A month later, in May, a man known in the scene as Vucha was found beaten to death in his Audi. In June, the pimp Dieter Glocker was run over. In October of the same year, the manager of the Aero Center was stabbed to death after he intervened in an argument between a pimp and a prostitute. In short, it just escalates regularly. In October, there was also an argument between two prostitutes in the Aero Center in which one woman was slightly injured. The woman goes to her pimp, named Angie Becker, who is a member of the Nutella gang, and tells him about the incident. Angie wants compensation and goes with his gang to the pimps of the other woman, but he was already expected there. 3 men shoot 30 times at the Nutella gang and hit Thomas, Klaus and Angie, who wanted to avenge his wife. Angie and Klaus die on the spot. Thomas, known in the scene as Karate Tommy, is hit but manages to escape. The 3 men who shot at them also managed to escape. As a result of all these crimes, the police, who had claimed for years that there were no organized groups, set up a task force to investigate organized crime. The pressure on the pimps increases day by day, causing the GmbH to break up first. Michael, aka the beautiful Micha, from the GmbH takes his own life. Other neighborhood big shots, such as Vienna Peter on the other hand, team up with people who can solve his problems. And so Vienna Peter brings the contract killer Werner Pinsner to the neighborhood. Pinsner shoots a man for 30,000 euros who has blackmailed Vienna Peter, thus showing Vienna Peter that he keeps his word. Thanks to his new connection to the neighborhood, Werner Pinsner hangs around the area more and more often, mostly with the boys from the Chicago gang, who he meets on the neighborhood. Even though he is a weird guy, people respect him because they know what he is capable of. And so Pinsner gets the next job. A pimp wants his partner, a man called Peter Fellmeyer, eliminated. So Werner Pinsner lures Peter Fellmeyer into an ambush and shoots him. A little later, he gets the next job from the Vienna Peter. He is supposed to kill a business partner with the stage name Lacquer Shoe, and Lacquer Shoe is also shot a little later by Werner Pinsner. This makes Wiener Peter the number 1 in the mid-80s. But if you're number 1, you naturally attract competition. A very notorious pimp named Waldy decides to visit Vienna Peter with a buddy and Stefan Henschel. The 3 men demand a share of the Palais d'Amour. But Vienna Peter of course refuses, so the 3 guys go after Vienna Peter. They beat him up in front of his women, not knowing how radically Vienna Peter deals with his competition. After the fact, Vienna Peter offers Werner Pinsner 60,000 to kill the 3 of them. In March 1985, Pinsner then shot Waldy and his friend. Waldy and Pinsner knew each other, which is why Waldy even let him into the apartment, not knowing that a price had been put on his head. Stefan Henschel was not present, and therefore had to fear for his life every day until he finally fled to Spain. The police are forced to take drastic measures in the wake of the bloody events. Therefore, they regularly launch raids until a person is finally willing to talk. The last evidence against Werner Pinsner is collected, and on April 15th, 1986, Pinsner is then surprised in his apartment and arrested. During the interrogation, Werner Pinsner starts to talk. He talks about all his murders and who the clients are, but he will never be able to testify in court. During an interrogation, Pinsner's girlfriend smuggles a revolver into the room where the interrogation is taking place. Pinsner then uses the revolver to shoot the officer who interrogated him, his girlfriend, and finally himself. Incredible, man. Vienna Peter and the other clients that Pinsner had named were all arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment. Vienna Peter was released in 2001 and then deported to Austria. Today, he is said to live in Ibiza. 90% of the pimps were brought down in the end. Many were also shot later, spent years in prison, or ended up taking their own lives. This marked the end of the Reeperbahn's bloodiest era, and there was room again for new faces. So then, the Hells Angels came more and more to the neighborhood. A short time later, they already had 70 women in the Aero Center. Since then, they have spread throughout the neighborhood. In addition to them, many foreigners are still trying to conquer the neighborhood. In the early 90s, Albanian groups tried to take power. They forced all gastronomes and brothel owners to sell their businesses to them, and those who refused usually became victims of violence. This allowed Albanian gangs to buy a great deal of real estate in the neighborhood, which they still own today. But the Hells Angels would not be driven out and, along with all the small groups of Albanians, Russians, and Kurds, they became more and more powerful until the 2000s. In the summer of 2000, the Hells Angels were at their peak, but an Angels member named Matthias is said to have beaten his wives, who then go to the police and talk. The police, who are not on good terms with the Hells Angels anyway, crack down on them because of this. With 400 officers, they search all the Hells Angels premises and confiscate 17 million euros, which were allegedly untaxed. So the 3 leading Hells Angels members went to jail, and once again, a power vacuum was left behind. At the beginning of the 2000s, the Merit Gang emerged and took over the neighborhood. The Merit Gang was a group of almost 100 guys from the bodybuilding scene. They were said to be very radical and to have made 27 million euros. In 2005, the head of the gang and several members were arrested. The trial ended with 7 acquittals, 2 suspended sentences, and only 1 conviction. But after all the stress, the head of the Merit Gang is said to have retired and opened a small brothel elsewhere. At the same time, one of the last old-timers on the block, an Albanian named Albanatoni, handed over his business in the Aero Center to his nephew named Selfie. Selfie then founded the Aero Center gang, which made headlines and made the neighborhood unsafe, until one member shot at a bouncer and several members were arrested. When they start shooting at each other because of internal disputes, the Aero Center gang also disbands, and the Aero Center is closed in March 2015. The police have understood that basically whoever runs the Aero Center is in charge of the neighborhood, so they rename the Aero Center. They call it Pink Palace and hire the first official manager, Thorsten Eigner. He is supposed to ensure that groups never again gain such power over the old business. But even after the closure and renaming of the Aero Center, it was anything but quiet on the Kiers. From 2015, there was a bloody clash between the Hells Angels and the Mongols on the Reeperbahn. A Mongols member ended up in prison for life, and a Hells Angels member was seriously injured, among other things. And I think such power struggles will continue in the red light district, even if it will most likely never be as bad as it used to be, because now almost every corner on the Reeperbahn is monitored by surveillance cameras, while the police crack down hard. The times have changed, and a pimp is no longer as in demand as he used to be, and you can no longer say exactly who is in charge on the Reeperbahn. The Hells Angels will always be a part of Hamburg's red light district, and I'm also sure that there are 1 or 2 who have a lot of power in the neighborhood. That's it for today with the OG gangs in Germany. As always, you can find all my sources in the video description. Stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.